Jack, although Don Revie is often remembered for his managerial career, in particular with Leeds United, it was at Manchester City where he first tasted success as a player. And you grew up a City fan, but what do you know about Revie?
Well, so I remember growing up, we had it's going to date me quite a lot, a video called something like Manchester City's Greatest FA Cup Victories, which I think it was my dad's. And when you're, I don't know, 7, 8 years old, and particularly if you didn't have any like video games or anything at home or Sky TV, I would just kind of, maybe this was, I don't imagine this was unique to me. I'd get up in the morning and I would just like watch football videos, which we had like a big cupboard of. And so I'd often watch this Man City's Greatest FA Cup Victories on. And of course it had the famous the FA Cup final win against Birmingham City in 1956. So I think Revie would have played in that 56 final, but because I remember Dad pointing that out to me when when I'd watch it with my dad, who's a big City fan as well. But I think that's everybody knows that's known as the Troutman final. So I wonder whether Revie's kind of star as a City player has slightly been, he's kind of outshone a bit by Troutman, because Troutman has become this it's a cliched word, but like iconic figure in the history of Manchester City and also in post-war English football, and has come to stand for something much bigger than simply being a very good goalkeeper, which he was. So in that sense, I think Revie's role in the City team in the 50s might be slightly underrated, perhaps, but he's certainly highly regarded for the way that he managed to play. I think there's a good bit in this on Jonathan Wilson's book, Inverting the Pyramid, about how Revie played as a kind of deep-lying number 9, like a number 9 who came back into midfield in a way that's been popularised, I think, initially by the Hungarian team. I forgot the name of the bloke who did it.
Hichikuti.
So in that sense, I guess Revie represents, being a very innovative player who was part of a successful City team and went on, I think, to play well at other teams as well. But I think his kind of, because of Troutman, he's not the number one player that people think of when they think of City in the 50s.
Yeah, when Bert Troutman won this award, he actually, in his reminiscing about it, he talks about Don Revie and how, from watching that Hungarian side and Hichikuti, that Revie revolutionised the City attack. And like you say, we would think of it maybe as like a false 9 position now, but at the time it was taken from the Hungarians, and Revie took that into his game. And does that kind of sum up him as a player and a manager, that he would learn from other players and he would bring it into his own game and revolutionise that City side?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, isn't it? Like how before football became as globalized and cosmopolitan as it is at the moment, how ideas moved around between different countries. Because obviously the spread of ideas now in football is incredibly quick. Like if Borussia Dortmund do something, then sooner, it doesn't take long for the Borussia Dortmund manager to be managing Liverpool, and then suddenly Liverpool are doing it as well. But 70 years ago, obviously that flow is going to be a lot slower, and so the success of City, and I'd be curious to know exactly whose idea it first was, whether it was Revie or the manager, but the success of City managing to see the Hungarian national team play a certain tactic and then adopt it for themselves, and for it to be very successful, and for English teams to be unprepared for it, just shows how back in those days there was just less awareness about adaptations and changes in global football ideas. It's like nowadays, if a team does something really cool on TV, someone will tweet it "Oh, amazing, look at what Napoli are doing," and then everyone on Twitter will know by Sunday 10 o'clock what Napoli have done. Whereas back then, I think there was probably a lot more of a capacity to catch people by surprise, and that, I imagine, was the strength of the Revie plan.
You mentioned your dad was a Manchester City fan as well. And how do Man City fans remember Revie as a player? Because I say his managerial career is mostly came with Leeds United, but he did have great success at City.
Yeah, I think he's definitely remembered as someone who played really well for City. Like I said, I think Troutman is like the dominant figure amongst the fans of that era. And then, of course, even Troutman is dwarfed by the giants of the late 60s, early 70s team, who were, before the Abu Dhabi takeover, the greatest ever City team. So in that sense, Revie's remembered as someone who played very well for City, but isn't like, City fans wouldn't rush to call him like an all-time great, I don't think, even though he was obviously very good during his spell at the club.